Hey Sudeep, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you so much. How have you been? It's been a while.
It's been a while, yeah. It's been a roller coaster ride, no, 2020, and a bunch of fun stuff professionally as well. And other than that, I think I really miss going out. I miss traveling. I miss meeting people. But then I think this really makes up for it in one way or the other. But yeah, how's Christmas for you? How's New Year's for you?
It's been good. I mean, it's been time with family, so that's the good thing with the situation that we are in, right? You try and make the most of what you have. For me, I think 2020 was about sharpening the axe, right? It gave you a lot of time, if you notice, the commute times, especially in a place like Bangalore.
Yeah.
It just gives you so much more time to do a bunch of things. So to me, I think I used the year predominantly to reflect about the last 5 6 years of work and see what were the areas that I could improve on. Right? There's always room for improvement everywhere. So for me, 2020 was about sharpening the axe, literally. Right? So uh, taking them apart, using first principles thinking, and then trying to improve. So that's typically what I would write off 2022. To me, it wasn't really a bad year. Right? It was a great year from that perspective.
That's great to hear. I think we're talking about product marketing today. Uh,
Sure.
so I want to dive in and give our listeners an introduction to path to product marketing. Now, I usually do this, but we've been doing it together, and this is your first one. So do you want to take this, or do you want me to handle this for now?
No, you should handle this, and I'll add if there are the things that kind of get missed out.
Got it. Okay. So for you guys out there, Sudeep and I, we started doing this as a way to give back to the product marketing community, and that's one thing. And another, it's from a lot of personal experience, right? I transitioned into product marketing a few years ago, and the transition wasn't easy. There was hardly anything on product marketing, and when I made the transition, I had to reach out to a ton of people and seek advice, and that really enabled me to make the transition in a nice way. And we are in 2020, and what I realized is that the definition of product marketing, what makes one successful, it's still very hazy. And quite a few people reach out to me even today asking me how to make the transition, and even after making the transition, how do you ensure that you remain successful and you keep delivering. So that's what got Sudeep and I talking, and we decided that we would like to answer this question by basically speaking to successful product marketers, recording these conversations and putting it out there. And this is for people who want to transition into product marketing, who are already in product marketing and want to climb up the ladder, or this is for people who are entrepreneurs. If you're scratching your head wondering what product marketing can do to your company and your product, uh, this webinar will probably answer your questions. So Sudeep, I think this is the second webinar, and we've got a bunch of interesting ones lined up as well.
Yes, we do. And the one thing though that I'll add to that, right, especially from a product marketing leadership perspective, the one problem that I consistently face across different tenures, across different companies of different sizes, is that there is a dearth for people that forget about have done product marketing, who understand what product marketing is, and can contribute meaningfully to this function, right? And therefore, my perspective on this is, hey, can we create a community of people that want to be product marketers in sometime in their careers, and could we give them pointers in terms of what they should be looking for and how they can make it not just as ordinary product marketers, but actually make it big in product marketing, right? I think to me that is the essence of what I was looking to solve, the problem that I was trying to solve, right? And I'm coming from a very selfish place where, hey, I need good people to work with, and this is one way we can probably get good people to work with as well.
Yeah, it's not easy to find content on this, right? It's a combination of hard skills and a bunch of soft skills as well. So let's get started. So Sudeep, before we begin and we dive into the questions, can you introduce yourself and tell our listeners who you are, what you do?
Sure. So I'm Sudeep, and I've been a product marketer for close to 10, 12 years. I've been an engineer before that. I currently handle a subset of products in the product portfolio for Progress Software. Been in multiple domains from core telecom to business process management, all the way into fintech. And now into developer and enterprise products, right? So and of course cybersecurity as well. So varied experience with verticals, varied experience with the size of companies as well. That's typically a little bit about me. I am broadly responsible for customer or prospect acquisition and customer acquisition, customer retention, and ensuring that customers are happy in the interim between the time they come on board and the time they decide to perhaps explore other possibilities with product, but do so from a very product and marketing perspective. So that's a very quick summary of what I typically would do anywhere in any of these different places.
Got it. I think you've got a rich experience of working in early stage startups and public companies as well, right? In product marketing roles, which is not easy to find, given that the role itself is quite young.
Yes, it's not young. It I think initially was not well defined. It still is not well defined, right? Depending on the kind of place that you are at. But just going back to your question, right? I think in terms of and if I'm getting this right, you probably are looking at, hey, how does product marketing differ between different company sizes, and how does that evolve, right? And to me, this is how it typically works. In a smaller company, typically in a very young company that's an early startup, if you will, a product marketer is doing everything from product ops to sales ops to even selling a little. Right? He or she is not necessarily doing a lot of the product management work. That's typically the founder at a very early stage startup, right? At a Series B, Series C kind of stage of startup, you're doing a lot more sales. You're definitely not doing product. You're not contributing to product management, right? And product marketers contribute to product management, but it's heavily weighted in terms of just getting revenue in, and how can you get that revenue in. In a bigger enterprise company, it's very focused, right? There the product manager basically decides on what gets put on the shelf. A product marketer decides how to get that off the shelf, and in so doing, these two functions and these two people, the manager and the product marketer, typically determine with sales leadership, with services, with customer support, and so on, a plethora of functions, what the go-to-market is, right? So that typically is how a product marketing or a product marketer actually works in companies of different sizes, and that's typically how the function also evolves.
Got it. So are you saying that while product marketing can have multiple definitions depending on the company or industry, that they're essentially responsible for the go-to-market? Is there anything else you would like to add to that definition? Or is there a single definition that can sum up what product marketers do?
I'd love to say that there is one, but if I could give you a broad-based definition, right? Product marketing is a function that centers around the customer, but views everything in marketing through the lens of a product, right? That's what I would say is, so how is it different from marketing, right? Marketing would have corporate marketing, you'd have analyst relationships, you basically have field marketing, and so on and so forth, right? Product marketing differentiates itself in that everything is done through a product. So how do I define the customer in relation to a product, to a problem that the customer is facing, the solution to which is my product? How do I define my channels and my partners just in terms of the kind of fit that they have with the product? What kind of channel or reach do I get depending on the kind of customer that or the prospect that I'm trying to reach out to, which again is dependent on the problem they have and therefore the solution being my product, right? So in this case, all roads lead to Rome, right? So I then view everything in terms of what we do in marketing around the product. But I am centralizing the ways to get to the customer based on how I define that person. That persona is typically what a product marketing person would own. Right. So this is typically how I would differentiate product marketing with other forms of marketing.
Got it. You're sort of the voice of the customer within the company, and you're looking at the
Yes.
product from multiple perspectives, and you're staying true to the product itself, right?
Yes, and if you don't, it very quickly impacts on revenue, right?
Yeah.
Which you will realize in some shape or form is a KPI for product marketers, right? You might not have a number that you're carrying,
Yeah.
but there will be metrics that are derived from that number that you own. So the minute you take your focus off of the product is when you start to see things go off from your perspective and from your KPIs.
Got it. And because you're talking about KPIs, would you want to talk about what KPIs the product marketer should ideally have? So this is a combination of both from both perspectives, right? From a product marketer's angle, so that they can be more accountable, and from an organization's angle, so that they can get more impact from the product marketers themselves. What do you think should the ideal KPIs be for a product marketer?
That's a good question, and that varies. Again, based
Okay.
on the kind of company that you're working on at, right? Predominantly, it is market sense-based KPIs, right? So, for
Okay.
example, what is the size of your market? What is your TAM? What is your SOM? What is your SAM, right?
Got it.
Total addressable market, serviceable, obtainable market, and the accessible market, right?
Yeah.
Basically, those are the three areas that a product marketer would concern himself or herself with. When it comes down to the numbers, it could potentially be marketing influenced leads within a pipeline, and
Okay.
those that have a very clear cut product centric messaging in them, right?
Okay.
So you're very clear about what those numbers are. In terms, and if you look at product marketers, they have something to contribute at the top of the funnel, at the middle of the funnel, not so much at the bottom of the funnel, but there is a small contribution there, right? So at the top, it could be contribution, product marketing contribution to the marketing pipeline, that is created. At the middle of the funnel, you could look at conversions, right? So for
Got it.
example, how many places did a product marketer actually touch a lead for that lead to either convert or not convert, right? And then
Got it.
of course you get your win rates and loss rates, and that is also a KPI for a product marketer. What kind of proof you're able to build in terms of just, hey, number of case studies, and then of course case studies have different avatars of their own, right? So you could have a full-fledged case study. If you're in an enterprise company, you probably would create a good two-pager. If you were in a slightly different place, in a new age digital place, you probably create a caselet, which is about a one-slide kind of a problem, solution, benefits kind of scenario. Or you could even create customer testimonials that are video-based, right? So again, these are go into the kind of content, but I'm getting into the weeds, right? And then, so that's proof. Then, of course, there is the whole sales enablement perspective, right? How can I help my sales leadership and my sales function to sell better, right? And could that be using competitive information? And again, competitive information is a different ball game of its own. So it's not just looking at what large advisories tell you in terms of what a Gartner or a Forrester or any boutique advisory would tell you about the competition. It's also about what your partners are saying, what resellers are saying, what are their customers saying. I have been part of teardowns, right, where you look at products and then you take the product apart and of course see how it's different from your own. I don't know many product marketers that have done this, but hey, if your product marketer can get involved in a competitive teardown, he's probably done a great job with
It's a
competitors,
hard thing.
right?
It's a really hard thing because try and identify a big difference between Freshworks, Zoho, and VTiger and Close.io. It's very hard because it's hard to pinpoint, right? Everybody says they have got the best UX, the most easy to use, the most economical. But in terms of feature comparison, it's very hard. And what's your take on this? Like, what advice would you have for product marketers who are in this commodity spaces? How can they compare when the products are so similar?
Well, I fundamentally do not agree with how product marketing has gone about uh, doing competitive, right? I think the first thing that, and I take part of that blame as well, right? Especially product marketers that have been around for a longer time. The easiest wrong answer is to put a table together.
Okay.
Competitor A, competitor B, and yours truly shines across the board on all those 500 parameters that you have chosen. And of course, your competition is not showing in as good light as that. That's one, and that's a rat hole that a lot of product marketers. I think this is a very rudimentary mistake that a lot of us make, and especially I made that very early on in my career. But the one thing that I would step away from is doing that, right? So, for example, you could call your feature something, and that
Yeah.
something that you call it is not something that I have, and I don't call it that, right? Let's say you call your feature, I don't know, I'm just making up stuff, right? You call it orange, I call it apple. We have two different features, and it's an literally apples and oranges comparison. Therefore, I stand out where I call apples, you stand out where you call
Yeah.
oranges. And you can say, hey, and this can go down a rat hole and finally confuse the decision maker,
Yeah.
which is completely contrarian to what you want, because your goal is to shorten the deal cycle,
Yeah.
right? I would rather, take a completely different approach and say, hey, these are, and this is background, and this is work that you do prior to even talking externally about this, right? As a product marketer, you figure out what your competitive differentiators are, right? Then you craft the story around that competitive differentiation. Uh, Classic human buyer behavior is such that we will focus on what is different. We don't focus on what is same. Right. So, for example, if I were to take like two classic models, like the iPhone 12 versus the 7, every time I show you a spec sheet between these two, what is it that you will notice first? You'll say, hey, what's the difference in camera resolution? What's the difference in processor? What is the difference?
Yeah.
How many times have you thought about what is the same between 7 and 12? And
Yeah.
what is the percentage difference that's actually different, right? The
Yeah.
same thing applies, and this is classic buyer behavior. And this applies even in consumer-driven products. It applies in even enterprise products. The ability to then differentiate and call that differentiation out. Tell your sales guys, this is what you should be talking about. Do not cast stones at the competition. It's a
It's
it's
very
a
hard.
very,
Yeah.
very bad idea. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think then you're good. But again, probably it's a long-winded answer to your question. But hey, tables are bad. Pretty much, they don't really give you much. Focus on what's different, what's your value, and then focus on telling a story around the value that you give in that regard.
Yeah, so we solved this in another interesting way in my previous company when we realized that it's again apples and oranges, right? Uh, I'm pretty sure that the competitive feature comparison that I prepared against my competitor, if the product marketer from that end would prepare it, in both the worlds, it would be a fair comparison. But in my world, I would win, and in his world, he would. So what we decided is,
Exactly.
so this is what we decided, right? We decided that hey, let's not portray what we are saying. Let's portray what our customers are saying. So what we essentially did is we went to G2 Crowd, we went to Capterra, we went to Gartner, and we took a
Mm-hmm.
dump of all the reviews and the stars ratings that they have. And I think that really helped us differentiate ourselves, because we said, hey, don't look at what our website says and their website says, because that's questionable. See what our
Mm-hmm.
customers are saying, because there's a very good chance that if somebody's written a review and rated each and every feature, they haven't just rated its presence or absence, but they rated how well it's to use, right? Because every phone has a camera, but the iPhone's camera is much better than in quite a few others. So, but the user reviews matter there. So that's what we did,
Mm-hmm.
and that turned out to be a pretty good. It was a table nonetheless. It wasn't a big story that we're trying to tell, but we decided to give our customers a chance to portray what's good and what's bad, and that really worked out.
Sure. So a similar approach that, again, I think I'll just take off from where you left, right? A combination of a customer advisory board that's advising you on problems that they're facing and the solutions that you can provide as a fintech company or somebody like Zeta, and a combination of your customer sales and marketing efforts.
Yeah.
You can potentially get your customers to talk to your prospects.
Yeah.
Nothing like one customer talking to a prospect and saying, "Hey, I have no axe to grind here. I don't have anything to gain or lose."
Yeah.
But this is what I think is a good idea with Company X. And hey, and given that I am telling you this, I'm putting my credibility on the line. Now, this is easier said than done,
Yeah.
but it tends, just trying to do this tends to up the probability of conversion of these accounts by almost 50 to 60%, because it also de-risks the buyer, the prospective buyer. He can go to his management and say, "Hey, there is this customer in this space, in this vertical, and fairly credible, and they're doing this with product X.
Yeah.
I'm assuming its due diligence is done there, and therefore there is a certain amount of de-risking that happens when we try and invest in the product."
Got it. Got it. I think that's a good idea as well. Okay, coming back to,
Sure.
I think we went on a little bit of a tangent there, but a really good one
Yes,
nonetheless.
we did.
So we were discussing about how do you define product marketing now, and you did a really good definition of that, and I think it's a very comprehensive one that covered different company sizes and stages. But in your opinion, right, you've been in the marketing space for quite a long time, and the product marketing space for quite a long time. What do you think are some of the challenges that product marketers face, and how did you overcome them?
The foremost challenge that a product marketer faces is a lack of understanding of his function amongst his own in his own org, right?
Yeah.
Right. I think a lot of product marketers will nod their heads when they hear this. The sales leadership thinks that you're a sales guy. The product leadership thinks you're a product guy. The services guy thinks you just need to keep their customers happy. So, hey, where is my services related content? The marketing function thinks you're the content guy. The ability to clarify to different parts of the org what product marketing does and what your end tangible deliverables are, I think is a challenge that product marketers will continue to see, right? I see that getting solved in the product management space. This used to be a problem probably a year, no, a decade ago, right? Where you just had engineering and business engineers with a business sense, right? Who then became what came to be known as product managers. But then it became fairly well defined there that they owned the P&L, they owned the problem, they owned the solution, or the solution to the problem, right? The customer definitely owned the problem. That has not yet happened with product marketing. So that's the fundamental challenge. That's challenge one. Just getting internal stakeholders to line up on what you as a function will do and what you are responsible for. And if you don't get that lined up, there is every chance that a product marketer will fail, right?
Yeah.
That's the first one. The second is in terms of actually getting customer interactions. There are way too many functions that are doing this, right? So on the brownfield side, that is your customer side, there is your customer support that's talking to your customer. There is your products guys that are talking to your customers. There is senior management that's talking to your customers. There are a lot of fairly important people who are standing in line in front of you talking to your customers. So that's on this side. On the prospect side, you have sales front and center, right? And you have marketing before them. They're basically doing the acquisition, sales is doing the conversion. So product marketing kind of stands there. The second challenge to me is getting conversations with your customers. To me, if there is one takeaway from this conversation that we have to anyone that's listening to it, is get more time speaking to your customers. It is an underrated hack. Especially if you're new to a vertical, you're new to a product, you're new to a market, or you're new to a geo, right? And each one of these has their own nuances. Try to get as much time as possible with your customer. If there is absolutely no way of doing this, hey, go there and take notes, right? You be the guy that just takes notes. You still learn far more than the average Joe that's doing product marketing. So to me, that those will pretty much be the top two challenges that I see from a product marketing standpoint.
Got it. So I think we should come to the second one, which is a very important one as well, in a bit. But let's take a step back and look at the first one: building awareness within the organization about what a product marketer does. How should one go about doing this? And if you can share an anecdote from your experience, that will be really helpful.
Sure. So I'll give you two examples: one where I succeeded and one where I did not. Right, and we'll go with the one where I did not. So the one place that I was not able to get consensus was in a place where it was a fairly successful startup. The definition of what product marketing itself was fairly amorphous. And the definition of marketing itself was also fairly amorphous, right? We were the guys that would get customers. We were acquisition guys. There was very little else that marketing did. But just in terms of defining what product marketing would do in that sense. So it meant getting buy-in from product, from sales, from senior leadership. I think we were not able to get our ducks in a row there, right? It's a function of different it's a different function of different teams having different KPIs and they wanting to get their KPIs without taking a step back and saying, hey, while I can go hammer and tongs on the KPI, do I have the infra to support this, this push that my team wants to have? So that's a very classic case of where it fell apart. Where it really did well is pretty much a lot of places, right? In different sized companies, where you're able to tell the senior most leader and say, hey, this is exactly what product marketing will do. And more importantly, this is what we will not do. You have to be very clear about what you're not going to do, right? There is a concept of via negativa, right? It's simplicity by subtraction, right? So you just subtract stuff that a lot of other functions would do, and what is left is for you to focus on, and you go like really deep into those areas, and then sell that decision to your peers. Whether it's at sales, whether it's at services, whether it's in marketing, or whether it's in pre-sales, right? These are the 3 or 4 functions that you sell it and say, hey, this is typically what we're going to do, and then run with it. So it's a lot of education. It's a lot of awareness. It does not happen overnight. It typically takes multiple quarters to do this. But I think that's the only way to kind of surmount that challenge in terms of just getting by.
Yeah, I got it. I think it's also important as a product marketing community for us to spread awareness of what a product marketer does. Because I've seen that when the thing is, once somebody's hired for a role, I think it's too late to change the definition of what the role is, right? Because it can come across as somebody who's trying to evade taking responsibility for a certain target that's set up. Because let me give you this example. Let's say that a company's hired a product marketer and they put customer acquisition goals or growth goals on them. But the product marketer does a lot more than just growth. This should probably be an entire growth function supporting a product marketer as well. So, what do you think? It's quite hard, right? It's not easy to change that.
I see. I think the one thing that you say is true, right? So when there is a certain responsibility that somebody is being hired for, I think you should factor that in when you're accepting the offer. Right?
Yeah.
And you should be ready to deliver that, right? I think more from a not so product marketing, but a very professional learning perspective, I think just the ability to contribute to adjacent areas. So for example, while I am a product marketer, it does not limit me from getting into a pre-sales set of capabilities, right? I might want to explore that and try and help there. I might not be able to get into core tech pre-sales. But again, it depends, right? So in my case, it was far easier simply because I had a technical background and I was able to get into that very seamlessly. So I should be able to do that just to demonstrate that this is possible and also to be able to deliver on the interim numbers. I think that's you do not. So the one thing in product marketing is you always give first. You always help sales first before sales can help you. You help marketing first before marketing can help you. You always get the numbers first before you can get by, right? So
Got it.
there is literally no way that you're trying to evade a number that you put your hand up for. I
Got
think
it.
that you should, that if you had a problem with that, you shouldn't have first accepted the role in the first place,
Yeah,
right?
I got it. I got it. Yeah. I think the give first and then ask later is a very good principle to live by, especially for
Yes.
product marketers who are handling multiple stakeholders from different teams with different agendas. But yeah, so before we get into stakeholder management as well, right? I think moving on to the next challenge that you
Mhm.
mentioned was mainly about having customer conversations or getting the time to talk to customers and
Mhm.
that interaction and build the knowledge about a certain vertical, right? Now, how do you think product marketers should go about it? Can you give more context on and what these customer conversations look like, and so on?
Sure. Let's break this up into three parts. What happens before a customer conversation? What happens during a customer conversation? What happens after? Right? Before a customer conversation, you want to be very clear about the segments you're going after. And if you don't do this well, let's assume you don't do it well. Uh, Post the customer conversations, when you're doing your analysis, you'll find that your feedback is all over the place. you, you're not really able to get your N, or the total size of your population is fairly significant, but correlation or R square numbers in terms of just the analytics, right? The correlations are fairly weak. That's when you know that you didn't do your segmentation that you should have done in the first bit really well, right? So get your segments right. Get your segments to support your theoretical understanding of your customer persona. And I'm assuming by that time you have a good detailed customer persona, in place. Assuming all that is done, the part to really then is actually preparing the questionnaire for your customer, right? And you might not be able to stick to those questions, but at least it'll be a guideline just in terms of managing the conversation. The customer is in charge of the problem. He is not in charge of the solution. So, hey, Mr. Customer, we have this absolutely wonderful way in which you can do online payments at a click of a button. There's single click checkout, and it helps you with 500 other things. What do you think about it? Is a classic, you know, uh, introduction to a customer conversation that I've been part of. Again, no specific companies here, but just calling this out, right? You've already pitched the idea. He's not going to come and tell you, hey, it's a bad idea, right? He's not going to, or the other thing, hey, I've been working on this product that solves the following problems. What do you think about it? Given that you are seeing the same problems, you made the supposition that he's facing the same problems, and two, you've told him that you have significant sunk cost in him saying yes, right? And you have to understand that his saying yes or no has no bearing on him, right?
Yeah,
He could say it's a great idea, but he doesn't have to pay the price in terms of the investment in time or effort, and he might end up not buying it as well. But you go back to that conversation really happy, like yes, this is the right thing to do, right? He does not own the solution; he owns the problem. You own the solution. You don't ask him about the solution. So, Mr. Customer, so when you're talking to the customer, ask him about the past. Do not ask him about the future, right? How is he handling a set of workflows? What are the gaps, right? What is he doing currently to work around those gaps, right? There is no point in you telling him about your solution. Do not tell him about your solution at all. This is not a pitch meeting. There is a sales team that will pitch. They that don't do their job because they're far more qualified than any one of us is in terms of doing that, right? That's the first important part in just the conversation. Do not talk about the future. Do not talk about the solution. Let him handle the solution. Let him handle the problem. Let him handle the past. Ask him about specifics. Try and get data from him, because what is the amount of time that you spend in getting this done? Well, the number of people that are trying to do this. Okay, you're not putting people behind this problem. The number of different software that you're using. What kind of integration is working? Do you see this as a good pipeline to get you your end result quickly? It will give you a sense of cost of opportunity or opportunity cost that the customer is facing, and then of course you can get to your pricing at a later stage. Uh, the third part, very importantly, in a customer conversation is be prepared to ask the one question that will shake your entire model, right? So let me give you an example. If you're a fintech company and like you're part of, and you go to a small to mid-sized segment, let's say that's your segment, you should be prepared to ask the question, what percentage of your transactions are done online and how much is done in cash? And if the customer says 90% is done in cash, and that overall pie is not a big pie, it's a small pie, then you know the 10% is not worth fighting for, which means your entire supposition is wrong. You should be willing to ask the question that shakes the fundamental assumptions of your product idea or the product that you're pitching. And if you're not asking that question, you're leaving time on the table that could have been used for something very different. And of course, finally, what happens post the customer meetings, I think a lot of people do it, is essentially you use post-its and you kind of cluster responses and try and see where you get the most value out of that. But I think a lot of people do that. Where a lot of things go wrong is in the prep for these calls and the call itself. Hey, Mr. Customer, this is what I have. What do you think of it? You've lost the meeting right there.
Got it. I think again, as you said earlier, right? We have to be the voice of the customer, and if we keep putting our product and sales filter on, then you sort of you cannot you will not understand the customer's problem properly, and that ends up affecting the messaging and the positioning that you have. So you'll end up doing a hard sell, which is supposed to be a sales guy's job. So yeah. And so I've done this in the past as well, and I'd like to add a couple of points. This is something my senior had recommended as well, which I thought is a very good way to go about understanding a certain customer. And what it is you speak to a few customers, and you try and find a hypothesis around what you want to solve. You sort of, as you said, zero in on a vertical of customers. You also need to zero in on which problem and which sector you need to really go into, right? A lot of customers have a lot of problems, but even in a single team, in a single function, you'll have to sort of zero in towards which problem you want to solve and take them in that direction. So what we do is we used to speak to 10-15 customers or prospects, and then we used to draft a survey monkey or a type form questionnaire, and then sort of shoot it out to a larger audience and sort of validate if your initial hypothesis is correct. Now, from this, we have qualitative data and quantitative data, and then you sort of try and identify a pattern there. And so these patterns, if they match, that's a good thing. And then you'll start seeing that, hey, among the survey respondents, there are a few customers you'd like to talk to as well. And then we go down that rabbit hole. And I think one of the most interesting things about how to get these customer calls, right? We've tried so many different tactics, and this is what works best. Both speakers. You believe it or not. You believe it or not, you tell somebody, irrespective of where they come from, you're going to get a Bo speaker if you answer this survey and you get on a call with us. People tend to make time out of thin air for you. So that's a good one. But Sudeep, in your take, and this is something that I've found as well. I've recently shifted business units, and I'm trying to understand the customer much better. And the thing is, but the sales owns a relationship with the customer. Some of them are very high-profile customers. So what's your advice on how a product marketer should schedule these customer calls? I can't bypass the sales guy because he owns the relationship. How do you think one should go about doing this?
I'd go back to the initial the comment that I made in terms of give to get, right? What value are you adding to that conversation? How are you helping the sales guy close a deal or help him progress that lead down the pipeline, right? What is it that you're doing? If you can answer that question, then you have the meeting. Because an answer to that question will typically tell you what you need to do, how you need to pitch it to sales leadership, what is the content you need to create if you're going to create any content, and say, hey, you could even do as much as a pitch for your sales person on that account, right? Do the pitch and then let him handle the relationship. I'm very sure he'll be more than happy for you to do the pitch if he is not too tenured. If he is a tenured sales rep, he would probably do it on his own. But again, he would never say no to help just in terms of getting the pitch done, right? And just as a thank you, you could potentially say, hey, I'd like to be part of that meeting as well.
Got it.
Nothing wrong in asking, right?
Yeah,
Like I said, if push comes to shove, product marketers should be willing to take notes to get a meeting.
certainly, yeah.
I think especially the junior ones, right? If you've just made your first year in product marketing in some role there, or in a role that looks like product marketing, anything to get your ears on a customer meeting, just do that, because that's nobody questions market inputs, right? And if you can collate and make sense of that, pure gold.
Yeah, that's really important. I think in one of my earlier conversations, I'd asked one of the guests, what should a product marketer bring to the table? Sometimes he, they might lack the skills that's required to run a few tactics in the company. They might lack some soft skills to manage stakeholders, but if their knowledge on the customer is good, then they've got a really good chance of succeeding in that role. So I think getting these calls and taking meeting notes, that's a great start. So Sudeep, so now we've spoken quite a lot about a few technical details about product marketing, right? But I want to step back and understand your journey into product marketing. Early on in the introduction, you mentioned that you were in a technical role and then shifted into product marketing. I know you've sort of traveled around the world as well with education and a couple of jobs, and you've got that diverse experience. So, can you talk a little bit about how you made the transition and how was the journey for you?
Sure. I think I got into product marketing by happenstance, right? Quite honestly put. I've been an engineer by training. I worked as an engineer in multiple places, both in India and outside, for about 6, 7 years. The one thing that, so as I climbed the engineering ladder, I think the one thing that I realized was that as engineers, we're very good at developing some very cool stuff. But we don't do a good job just in articulating the stuff that we put together, right?
Yeah.
That's how it all started. And like I said, happenstance as well, serendipity, if you will, is that at that time, my manager decided to give me a customer facing role.
Got it.
He was like, hey, you can talk well, so why don't you just handle the customers for whatever that means, right? That's how I got my teeth into customer facing roles, and very quickly understood that this is a space where there are very few people that understand technical sides of the product and can convert that into fairly simple English, and simplify the message, right? Like I say, it doesn't take a genius to make anything complex. It does take genius to simplify stuff, right? So
Yeah.
just being able to do that, and then so very quickly moved on into slightly customer facing roles, but this is way back, right? I realized that you couldn't get into product marketing without a management degree. When I got a management degree, and then of course made the shift into product marketing, but I still continued to be on the gray area where I was always dealing with the tech folk while dealing with the marketing guys, right? So if the minute you lose grounding on the tech side, on how the product is actually engineered, what are the hard problems that are being solved, you lose your edge as a product marketer, right?
Got
I
it.
think that's typically how I made the transition into product marketing.
Got it. So, how does one figure out if product marketing is the right career for them, right? Because I'll give you an example. Sales is something that quite a lot of people pick up because they see a movie and they see the sales guy being successful buying cars and bikes and houses, and then they get into the role only to find that it's a number game. It's very stressful. Uh, and I've seen a lot of my friends, including myself, face that reality. So how does one ensure that they know what they're getting into when they choose product marketing?
So there are two principles here, right? The first principle is taking two very distinct, diverse fields, putting them together, and then saying, "Hey, uh, what can I do with these two?" So, for example, in the case that I gave you, this was at the time when product marketing wasn't really product marketing. It was just the fact that I was tech savvy and I could explain tech, right? I was articulate, and they're very different fields, right? So pure articulation could be in anything in English literature, whereas pure tech is everything engineering, right? So putting two very different, distinct fields together and saying, hey, can we, add value there? So that's one. That's typically how you would get into a given profession. So for example, if you understand technology, but you would like to be more tech and less customer focused, but you can also talk to customers and you have a flair for talking to them, you could get into a pre-sales role. Because that's where you need, or a technical sales role, which is basically where you need a lot of tech, but you also need a flair for customer interaction, right? Or you could get into product marketing role if you don't want tech to be 90% of your base. You're probably saying 20% tech, 80% marketing. That's a product marketing role. So it depends, right? So that's the first thing in terms of take diverse fields of knowledge, combine them, and those diverse fields should be ones that you're good at, and then combine, right? So and then figure out if there are avenues that you can pursue. That's the first way of doing it. The second is validating that hypothesis. And in the age of the internet, it's very easy to to do this. All you need to do is, hey, apprenticeship of sorts, right? You don't. This is permissionless. Ways of trying your hand at stuff. Hey, I want to try product marketing. Can I help you with whatever it is that you're doing? And you could go to a very small startup and try that out. But that's a risky approach. You could try that even within your own company and say, hey, Mr. Marketing, I understand tech. I'm from the tech side, and I'd like to get into this. Or, hey, I'm looking to pursue sales. Can I help with sales ops? Right? Because there is literally no better way of getting into sales than that. And sales ops doesn't have a lot of competitors to get in. Like the pipe there is fairly easy to get in, right? And you have a very good view of what sales looks like. What are the struggles of the sales guys? Where the number, and it's all numbers, right? So there is no gray, there is no interpretation, there's no different ways of looking at it. And then get into sales if that's what floats your boat. But figure out what are the 2 things or 3 things that you're good at, combine the 2, get into it, validate it using apprenticeships, and see if this is for you. And then I think it's a yay or nay. You're either doing it or you're not.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think the apprenticeship is a very good, thing. And I think given in this world, right, there's so many startups coming up, and all of these startups need more hands on deck, and they can't pay much. So I would advise for folks out there, if you want to transition into product marketing, and you've probably done a course online, and you think this is the career you want to pursue for the next couple of decades, and you do not really want to fail in a 9-to-5 job, you can reach out to a couple of startups, and even if they don't really pay you that much, or even if they pay you nothing, you can help them with some product marketing projects to really understand if this is your cup of tea or coffee. And then once you have that experience, it also helps you get a good product marketing job, and you also get the validation if this is something that you like to do for quite a long time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right then. So moving on, so you've transitioned now, right? Now, let's say somebody's transitioned and now they're like, oh, I want to get where Sudeep's going, or I want to get where Sudeep is right now. So how does one do that? Because, and this is a challenge that I'm facing, because I've been in product marketing for the past 3 to 4 years now, and I'm figuring out what's the best way that I can keep climbing the ladder. And it's not just the corporate hierarchical ladder, but it's more of learning as well. Because every organization I go to seems to have different KPIs and different channels they're focusing on. So I might enter an organization with a growth-centric KPI, and then I might focus on running a lot of campaigns. And then I might join an enterprise organization where I might focus a lot on sales enablement and competitive analysis and positioning, right? So how do you navigate all of this? Like how do you build your skills over time, and how do you ensure that you're always going in the right direction, that you're not being swayed by organizational needs? But you need to cater to the organizational needs as well. But how do you ensure that you don't go too much in a direction where you can't come back again?
Sure. So my way of doing it is very simple, right? And this is this is a very tactical approach. Make 2 columns. Column 1 is the stuff that you need to do for product marketing, right? And you can go online and you can find enough that'll fill that column up. The other column is the tricky one. That is the one that you will need to figure, where you're able to identify areas that are priority for the organization, and they are also on your list for product marketing, right? Once you have those areas, and probably let's say you have 5 things on the product marketing column, but only 2 or 3 things on the org priority column that are overlapping. Then it's about just picking those three and then going very deep into those 3 areas, right? And trust me, there are enough areas within product marketing where you can get really deep in and learn a lot. I'm still learning every day, right? So, like I just said, customer conversations is something that you could get into. You could get into. I hear this a lot: the dark arts of positioning, right? I mean, it's not right. So it's actually very numbers driven. If you really get into positioning and how that's done. But if you're looking at a new product launch, for example, that your org is really prioritizing, positioning is important. It's the bread and butter of the initial bit. Get into that. Nobody's going to stop you because you're adding value to the GTM, right? And if you're in a senior role, you probably have a wider span. You can get into a bunch of different things and give your team the chance to contribute to those different areas, right? So those are the areas where I think that's typically how you would try and get a good overlap between what you want to do versus what the org wants to do. But if you try and get into something that you want to do, but that's not priority for the org, you're just wasting your time.
Yeah, certainly, and it comes across as well to everybody else that you're pushing your own
Yep.
agenda. Yeah. But I think I really like that whole thing about the columns. It's a simple approach, but it works. Okay, so moving on, right? What do you think are some of the mistakes that people do early in their career, especially as a product marketer?
I can recall 2 very clear ones. You trust me, I've done both. Or made both mistakes, not done. So either lean heavily on the sales side or heavily lean on the product side. So the sales guy says, hey, if you have these 2 features, I can sell the next 10 deals. And you go and say, hey, no, these 2 features absolutely need to get done. You've practically been fleeced that side, right? You believe everything that was told to you secondhand. And that could potentially, and if you're taken seriously, that you're probably investing time, energy, engineering resources to get those 2 features that may or may not actually sell. That's one. 2 is leaning the other way, believing in the better rat trap, right? So saying, hey, the more I engineer this rat trap, the better it's going to sell. But there may be no rats to trap, right? You're over-engineering, or you're providing input to over-engineer the wrong product, which is a completely, it goes against everything that you want to do from a GTM perspective, right? These are typically the 2 mistakes that people make when they initially set foot in product marketing. It's very easy to get swayed by either sales or by, and it also depends on who you spend more time with. Right? Typically, you start to spend more time with product, and you'll say, "Hey, everything else in terms of feedback that's coming is not really valid." You spend more time with sales, and you'll say, "Hey, the product really isn't great." The ability, therefore, to get an independent view in terms of what your product is doing, what it's good at, and accept what it's not good at, I think is then critical. But these are the 2 mistakes that I see a lot of people make early on, at least.
Got it. I think again, I think having the view of the customer and figuring out what to build, what not to build, and sort of putting the filter on before you take the feedback in is important, irrespective of where you sit, right? Because I think some organizations require you to sit with salespeople, and some organizations require you to sit with product management folks. Cool. Thanks a lot for this. So as we come to the end of the webinar, just a couple more questions, because this is sort of piggybacking on something that you mentioned earlier, which is mainly around stakeholder management. Now, this is from a personal angle, right? I honestly believe that product marketers have a lot of responsibility to get a lot of cross-collaborative projects done. Let's say you're running an onboarding project, right? You need to work with the technical team, you need to work with the corporate marketing team, you need to work with the product management as well to ensure that the onboarding of the product is splendid. Now, and if you're looking at sales, you're again talking to multiple stakeholders. So stakeholder management, I feel, is a very important thing. So like how can one, what should be the best practices for ensuring that you do a great job at stakeholder management?
It's it's not that simple to answer. I wish it was. It isn't, right? So to me, I think it's more about listening than it is about talking. Understanding people's priorities and then seeing what part of that priority you can help with, both personally and in terms of just the team, right? So, for example, if you're growing a team and the team is very small right now, trying to commit to too many things might not be a good idea, right? You want to commit and deliver, not commit and then say, hey, we don't have people to execute this, and especially so in mid-sized and early or even later startups, right? This is a challenge that you should absolutely factor into. You need to be able to have regular sync ups with senior management, just to get a pulse of what they're thinking, what's going well, what's not. If you do not have those regular sync ups or that ability to get a feel of the pulse, you probably won't get stakeholder collaboration. And finally, of course, it is also in terms of seeing personally what is it that you can add value to in a leadership unit, right? I mean, like I said, you could either go with a strong product view or a strong sales view, but the value you would add is an independent view where you might say, hey, this is what the market feels, is what the customer feels, and get collaboration there. So to me, it's basically a bunch of these things in terms of, hey, looking where you are personally, looking at your team strengths and weaknesses, looking at the value you bring, and taking all of them and seeing what is the priority of these different stakeholders and adding value to them, and therefore, of course, getting again give to get, providing that value and saying, hey, in return, this is what I would like for you to help me with.
Got it. I think that's really good advice. Okay, so for the last question, now if you were starting off in 2020 in a product marketing role, you are probably just early 20s. What would you tell yourself?
I would say, so when I started off, I did a lot of content, decks every day, day in and day out, right? And over time, it kind of jades you. The one thing or the two things that I would tell people that are just getting into product marketing is you're going to do a lot of content because juniors are typically tasked with a lot of content. It's that part of the business that a lot of people tend to kind of delegate. Improve your writing, right? Understand how to write well. There are multiple books. There is, for example, on writing well, there are writing tools by, I think, Roy Clark. There are a bunch of books that you could, just read and understand. So definitely refine your writing and your ability to communicate and articulate really well. For example, on the enterprise side, you would use fairly fancy words. On B2C side, you would be as conversational as possible. Although now I see as styles of writing, you tend to be more communicative than trying to be fanciful in your English, right? For example, that's one. Two is, like I said, try and get in customer conversations as much as possible. You will not have the ability to lead those conversations, right? But you will have the ability to get a lot of the grunt work that a lot of other people don't want to do. Put your hand up for it and do it. And it will pay you back in heaps. To me, those are the two things that anybody who's starting out should. And the 20-year-old self I'd probably do that better.
Got it. I think I'll personally listen to this webinar again, make a list of things that I need to do right now. There's a lot of insights and a lot of good advice. Cool. I think we're done, Sudeep.
Sure.
Thanks a ton for your time today. Thanks a ton for taking time off on a weekend. It's personally a great start to the year because I got 1 hour from you, which is very, very hard as I've been trying for the past few months. But thanks a ton.
No worries. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Have a good rest of the day and a wonderful year ahead. I know it's it's been a challenging last year, but hey, things will only get better from here. So all the very best, and thanks a ton for your time as well.
Certainly, I think I'm looking forward to meet you and watch this again. I really miss those conversations.
We should.
All right, Sudeep. Take care. Bye.
Bye. You too. Bye.